Well, good morning. For those of you who are new around here, my name's Jason, and I'm a licensed counselor, and I'm on staff here at the church. You ever had one of those moments in your life when you look back on it and you knew, I'm probably going to remember this moment for the rest of my life? Had one of those? I had one of those actually about 2 months ago. In fact, I think I said to my wife out loud that night when we were getting ready for bed and we were just sort of settling in, I said, I think that's one of those moments I'm never going to forget. That was just amazing. I wasn't expecting that. And I mean that. I wasn't expecting it to be one of those moments because it wasn't one of those that you think it would be. It's not one of those that you would expect to be the kind of moment you think about forever. One where you take pictures and you frame them and it's like a significant moment in your life or a big transition in life or a milestone or an accomplishment in life. Those are easy. We know we're going to never forget those. In fact, I had one of those last week. My oldest daughter got married. I'll never forget that, of course. But this moment, it was an ordinary moment that you would not have expected. This moment was much more quiet. It was a lot more ordinary. Back in July, my wife and I decided that we would rent a cabin up in the North Georgia mountains. And both of our girls, they've had really super busy summers. It's been just one of those years where everything is happening all at once. It feels like my oldest, she's 23. Of course, she was planning her wedding. She's trying to finish up her degree. She's trying to start a brand new career all at the same time. So her life was chaos. And my youngest, who turns 20 next week, she had been away for the whole summer. We had barely even seen her. She was working as a counselor at a camp for the summer. But we knew that there was going to be this one small window of time in our summer in July where we might possibly be able to get all four of us under the same roof one time. And we were just like, we're going to jump on this moment. We got away from all the chaos, all the activity going on in our lives, and we actually got it done. Didn't know if it was going to happen, planned it, and we actually got it done. So there we were, sitting in rocking chairs on the front porch of a cabin nestled in the North Georgia woods. It's overlooking this beautiful horse farm. The mountains are in the background. It was just an amazing spot. We had just finished up dinner, and I pulled out you've probably seen these before. They make these little decks of cards where they have these really fun, open-ended questions that you can sit around and start conversations with. I had something like that with me, and so I decided, let's do this, and most of the time your kids go, do we have to, But we did it, and we kind of leaned in and said, let's just start talking. And so I started asking all these open-ended questions to my girls, and I just tell you, I learned so much that night. I learned a lot about my girls. I learned a lot about my wife. I learned a lot about myself, actually, even in that moment. We talked about some of our greatest fears. We shared some of the dreams that we have for our future. And, of course, we shared memories from the past. Now, that right there, the memories from the past, that's the reason that I wanted to tell you this story about my life. Because I'm a lot like most parents, I think. Most of us as parents, we kind of think we know what our kids' core memories are going to be. I thought I knew what my girls' core memories were because I feel like I'm like most parents. I tried to do all the things that a good parent wants to do for their children. We got them through school. They made good grades. Got them pointed in the direction of their life was going to go, maybe a great, possibly successful career. We took them on some, I think, pretty cool vacations. They weren't extravagant, but, they were good trips. We had a good time. We did some fun things. We let them do sports and extracurricular activities, whatever they were interested in at the time. We gave them a little bit of free rein and helped them get involved in stuff. And I'd say over the past couple decades, we made some pretty great memories as a family. But I noticed something as we sat there on that porch that night and talked. My girls started talking about their memories, their moments, the things that they would say had the greatest mark on their lives. And for the most part, they didn't talk about any of that stuff. They didn't talk about the big moments. They didn't talk about the stuff where we broke out of our regular routines and did something special. Now, they did mention them a few times. Don't get me wrong. But what I really heard that kept coming up over and over and over again were these regular old days, these routines that we had around our house, these rhythms of life that honestly, they were just kind of going on in the background of everything else. I barely really noticed them at the time. Stuff that you and I probably would look at and say, well, I didn't think that was such a big a deal. For example, my girls talked about this thing that they have now coined. They have a phrase for it. They said, oh, I remember daddy days. They call them daddy days. Basically, when they were really, really little, preschool age, I had one day off during the week that I just decided, my wife and I said, you're going to stay home and keep the kids, and they're not going to go to childcare that day. And so I stayed home with them. And every time, just because I was lazy and didn't want to fix lunch, I took them out to lunch. That was the thing we did. And I would let whoever was with me that day just to choose where you want to go to lunch that day. And so as kids that age will do, they chose the same place and ordered the same thing over and over and over again every single time. They talked about that and how that meant something to them. They talked about every morning they would get up and they would ride with their mom to school. And my wife used to teach at Northgate High School. And so they talked about how great it was to ride to school with mom, go to the high school, catch the bus, drive to their school, which was either their elementary or middle school. And then at the end of the day, they get on the bus with all the teacher kids and they get to ride back to the high school, and how they got to run up and down the halls and play with all the teachers' kids and all the fun that they had doing that stuff every single day. My point is, they talked about the regular stuff. The stuff that was going on repeat, that happened during the daily grind of us just trying to make it through every single day as a parent. And so I'm lying in bed that night, and after we'd had the talk, and I'm sort of downloading the experience of what it was like sitting on that porch with my wife and my girls, and I started reflecting on my own life. I started thinking about, what are my memories? What are the things that I would say kind of shaped me? And before I knew it, things started coming up in my mind. And all of a sudden, I realized I'm sitting in my grandmother's kitchen at the table where she had a spread of food every Sunday, and we had Sunday lunch almost every single week. I sat around that table and I ate those meals. I started tasting the steak biscuit that my dad would buy at Hardee's every Sunday morning on the way to church. It was just our thing, and he always stopped and we bought the same thing. I started hearing the music from the records that my dad would play over and over again, coming out of this massive 1970 stereo with the speakers that were as tall as I was. You remember those? And I remember some of those records, they shaped me. They made me love the kind of music that I love today. I remember the first note of Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. Some of y'all don't even know who he is, and that's a shame, but it was never the same again. I heard the prayers that my dad prayed over and over and over again around our kitchen table. I heard the sound of my mom's voice that would sing hymns while I would sit on the pew right next to her in Sunday church. These are songs that if you started singing them right now, I could tell you every single word. And I probably hadn't heard them in decades, but they're in me. They've shaped me. They're a part of me. And the truth is, I could go on and on and on about that kind of stuff. But it's just something that I've come to realize as I've grown older, and honestly, now that I'm reflecting on my kids that are growing into adulthood, the habits and the rhythms of our daily lives, the stuff that you just do over and over and over again, and I do over and over again. Sometimes we don't even think about them. We don't even realize them. These things are shaping us. They're forming us into who we are today. It's kind of like, when someone's making ceramics and they pour the plaster into a mold, and then they let the plaster sit in the mold to the point where it dries, and then you break the mold away, and the mold goes away, but what the shape of the plaster is basically what the mold was. It has formed it into a shape, and it is what it is because it sat inside of that mold. In the same way, that's what's happening in your house. It's what's happening in my house. These habits and these rhythms of everyday life are what we pour our lives into. And over time, without even realizing it, they shape us into a form. And as time goes on, we find ourselves becoming who we are and who we are continuing to become because of these habits and these rhythms. And so as we've been talking about, and we're sort of wrapping up this series today about how the faith that we have been given is passed on generation to generation, one life at a time. And how we live together as a family of God, one life on life, one at a time together. I want to talk to you about those habits and those rhythms and those patterns. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, this message is really written with the target in mind. If you're a parent and you've got some kids at home, I really want you to lean in, because I've just become convinced that this is just vital to us passing on the faith to the next generation. Others of you don't have kids at home, and maybe parenting is a memory for you, or maybe it never became a reality for you. But I think in what we're going to talk about today, I think even you can find some places where you would ask those very same questions about what is forming me. What are the habits and the daily patterns that are forming my house, my family, my household? Because we all live in a household. But I want to talk specifically to parents. And I don't want us to sit with the question, hey, what are we teaching our kids about God? Although that's a very important question. But I think the more important question is to start with is, what are we forming them into one ordinary day at a time? What do our lives look like? Because again, what I've come to believe is that mold that we just talked about, it's there, whether you realize it or not. And you're pouring children into it every single day. It happens long before you sit down to have the talk about God. There's formation that was going on before that. The mold's getting filled at the breakfast table. The mold's getting filled in the car line or at bedtime. And the cool thing is this is not a new concept. We can learn from ancient wisdom on this. It's one of the oldest claims that we find in the Bible. I want to read to you from Deuteronomy chapter 6. And the scene in this passage of Scripture is this. Moses is standing in front of the whole nation of Israel. They're about to go into the promised land, which they've waited for 40 years wandering around in the desert. And they're finally about to happen. It's finally about to happen. They're going to go in and take the land and inhabit this new place. God has promised them that they would come. And Moses knows this is not going to be part of his legacy. He's soon going to be gone, and he's going to die. And he wants to leave one final thing he wants to tell them before they go into the promised land. It's like Moses' farewell speech. And if you know anything about farewell speeches, you know that people tend to say the thing that matters most right at the end, right? And that's what Moses is doing here. But I want you to notice what Moses talks about. He doesn't say, hey, once we get into this land, it's going to be real important that all of y'all arrange your week so that you can sit down with your families and have a weekly Bible to teach them the law of God. That's not what he says. Here's what he does say. He says, you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today, the law that God had given the nation. But he says, repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home, when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, when you're getting up. Now look at that list right there. What is that list? Sitting at home, walking down the road, lying down, getting up. That's your Tuesday. That's just an ordinary every single day around your house. That's your day. See, Moses isn't telling parents, hey, you need to carve out some sacred time out of your regular life. No, what Moses is saying is your regular life is the sacred time. It is the moment. There is no line demarcating the two. There's no separation. In fact, if Moses wrote his speech today to me and to you and to families in our society, he would talk about car rides to school. He'd talk about dinners around the table. He'd talk about that 30 seconds at bedtime when you're about to turn the light off and your kid's about to fall asleep. You know, when my girls and I sat around that table at a restaurant on Daddy Days, I don't recall ever saying to them, all right, girls, let's sit and talk about who God is. I didn't have that talk, but I didn't have to. Because I think Moses already knew something that I didn't figure out until I was 51 years old sitting on a porch in the mountains. The talking about God, ordering the same lunch every single week, that's the same thing. Because the truth is, my girls were being formed all the time. And as parents, your kids are being formed all the time because you are too, so am I. Dallas Willard, the great author and philosopher, talked about this. He said, every moment of every day, you are being formed, you are being shaped into someone, into something. Right now, this moment, this week that's ahead of you, the week that just came behind you. Whether you intend for that shaping or that forming to happen, it is happening. So it's important that we think real carefully about this.
Most of us don't think much about the word spiritual formation. It's not really a category in our day-to-day life. It feels like a special, separate category from our real life. Like it's a class you can sign up for if you're really spiritual or you're really motivated, and something you can skip if you're just trying to get through the carpool line and keep everybody fed. We think, I'll get around to the discipleship stuff once things calm down, once the kids are a little older, once this season of life is over. But that's not how it works. There's no pause button on being formed and shaped. You don't get a break from it. Something is shaping your kids' heart every single day of their lives. Whether it's you or a screen or a coach or whatever they're scrolling at 11 p.m. in their room with the door shut, the mold is getting filled one way or another. The only real question you get to answer is, filled with what? This is what hits parents so hard because we tend to measure ourselves by the big intentional stuff. Did we do family devotions? Did we get them into a youth group? Did we have the talk about faith at the right age? And those are really important things that we should all be doing. But if that's all you're asking the wrong questions. Because while you're deciding whether tonight was the night to have a deep spiritual conversation with your teenager, formation was happening anyway. In how you talked to their mother when you were tired, and what you reached for when you were stressed, and whether Sunday morning felt like peace in your house or like a hostage negotiation to get everybody into the car to go to church. You didn't opt out of forming your kids by not being intentional. You just handed the job to whatever else was in the room. So if we're all being formed all of the time, if it's inevitable, then the question is, how does it actually happen? Well, it's actually pretty simple. In his book, After You Believe, N.T. Wright says that character isn't something you decide in the moment. It's something you've already built by the time the moment shows up. It works like this. Remember Captain Sullenberger, the pilot who landed that plane on the Hudson River back in 2009 and saved everybody on board? When the people asked him afterwards how he managed to pull that off, bird strike, both engines gone, no runway, minutes to figure it out. He basically said, I didn't invent anything new up there. I just did what 40 years of training had already put in me. Think about that for a second. He didn't have time in the moment to become a great pilot. He had to already be one. The emergency didn't build his skill, it just revealed it. And that's exactly how it works with character, with faith, with love. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall back on what's already trained into you, which means all those small, unimpressive, forgettable moments, the way you handled your kid spilling milk for the third time this week, whether you say something kind or something sharp when you're exhausted, those aren't just moments. Those are like reps you did at the gym. That's you building the muscle that's going to fire automatically 20 years from now when your kid is standing in front of something a lot scarier than spilled milk. And they need to know, without having to think about it, whether they're loved unconditionally or whether love is something they have to earn. See, none of us get born into this world loving God, loving people, being patient, being honest, which is all of the things that a good Christian parent wants their child to grow up to be. That gets trained into you the same way a pilot gets trained. It's 1,000 small reps nobody's applauding you for, until one day it's just who you are. So the mold is always being filled, but not by the big speech, but by the 1,000 small reps nobody's keeping score on. Which brings us to the part where this actually gets practical. Because if reps are what matter, what reps are actually running in your house right now?
Recently, I came across this book by a guy named Justin Earley. It's called Habits of the Household. And the basic premise he brings up in this book is this. He says, every one of us, and of course every family, has what we would call a liturgy. Every single one of us, whether you even know what that word means or not, you have a liturgy. Now, what is a liturgy? Well, a lot of us have heard that word used in like really formal church settings. You know, you think of stained glass and rituals and things that you go through. But practically speaking, all a liturgy is just this pattern that you just do over and over and over again. And then as you do it over and over again, it tends to shape you. The hope is in spiritual liturgies that it would shape us into the form of Christ, and it would shape our affections and the way that we love God and other people. But the author's point is this: you've already got a liturgy running in your house right now, whether you've taken stock of it and understand it or not. You've got patterns, you've got habits, you've got things that you do over and over and over again. So do I. So the question has never been whether your family has a pattern or has a liturgy. The question is, did you pick it? Or did it just kind of happen by default? Did you, as we talked about a few weeks ago, did you just drift into it? Because drift often never takes us to good places. It often takes us off course. So, for example, think about your actual Tuesday. Not the Tuesday you dream up in your head that you wish you had. Not the Tuesday that you want to post on Instagram. What's the real Tuesday like? The one you actually live. For example, what happens the moment everybody wakes up at your house? Calm or chaos? What happens at dinner? Even if you even eat together? Are phones down and everybody's talking, or are we all scrolling in silence? Are you even sitting at a table together, or is everybody just grabbed the food and scattered all over the house? What's the last thing that happens before your kid falls asleep? Does it involve prayer or a screen? Or maybe you yelling up the stairs to turn off that light and go to sleep? What is it like? And listen, I'm not saying this because I want you to feel guilty. Because listen, my Tuesdays, they are not something that I would be proud to share with you all the time either. I'm asking because this stuff, as we've been saying, it is not neutral. It matters. It's not just logistical details of your life that you've put in there just to try and survive. This is your liturgy, and it is discipling you, and it's discipling the people in your home. You and everybody else in your house are being formed by this liturgy every single day, whether you intend for it to happen or not. Whatever's happening on repeat. Like Sierra said, those are the reps in the gym. Those are the repetitions over and over. Every single dinner, every single bedtime, every car ride to school. And over time, you do enough of those reps, you build a muscle. And you build a person out of that. So in that book that I mentioned, the author has this phrase that I love. He says, the ordinary stuff is the extraordinary stuff. We don't often think that. Bedtimes, mealtimes, car rides, how you pass the plate at dinner. That is the training ground for a life. Not someday in the future when they'll get a certain age, but right now. Not that deep conversation that you think I'm going to have one day when they're old enough to really get it. No, right now is formation time. Tonight is formation time. At the dinner tonight when they spill the milk and the mashed potatoes are all over the floor. They are being formed, and so are you. But I don't want to leave you just with a lot of what ifs and maybe regrets. I want to give you some good news that I think might be buried in all of this. Because I know some of you are doing the math right now and you're thinking to yourself, how many nights this week did I not get it right? That's typically where our brains go to. They typically fall back on these feelings of failure and they well up inside of us. And I get that because I feel some of those same feelings right now too as I'm even talking about this. But here's some good news about failure. No, none of us like to fail. None of us like to not get it right all the time. I get that. But you realize that failure is not the enemy of you being formed into the image of Jesus. Actually, it can become part of your liturgy. I want to talk about that for a second. Your life and your rhythms that you build into your home, you're not going to get them perfect all the time. You're going to get it wrong a lot of the time. The question is have you built in a rhythm of how you handle those situations? How do you handle a blown up bedtime? How do you handle the short temper before school? How do you handle those days when you get it wrong? Because see, that's not a break in the discipleship or the formation of your children. That's actually the moment. That is the discipleship. Because your kid, they're not watching for you to be a perfect parent. As they grow and understand life, they'll understand you're not perfect. Because neither are they. But what they're watching for, what do you do when you're not perfect? How do you handle that? Trust me, I wasn't good at this when I first got married. I wasn't good at this when I first became a parent. I'm not even good at it today. I wouldn't call myself good at it, but by God's grace, I think I'm better. But I have become convinced over the years that the ability to own your mistakes, to apologize, and to repair. Parents, that might be the most important skill you have to offer your children as they grow up. Is that ability right there to own failure, to admit it, and to repair it. Because face it, everybody in your family knows when you get it wrong. Okay? We all know it. And I say this a lot to my clients. You say, you know the fastest way to get right again when you're wrong is to own it. Is to say it out loud. I was wrong. Now you're right. See? It's to go into your daughter's bedroom, which I have done. And it ain't easy. But you sit down on the corner of that bed and you say to her, honey, your dad lost his temper tonight. I am so sorry. Now, what you did was still wrong. And you're going to face some consequences for what you did. And we will talk about that. But it does not make what I did any better. I said some things to you, or I said some things to your mom. I should have never said those things. Please forgive me. And I will try to do better from now on. I will be a better dad because I love you and I love this family. And more than that, I love Jesus. And I want to be the dad that looks more like him every single day. That right there, when you can muster up the courage and the humility to do that, what a mold you are pouring your kids into. What formation would happen inside of them. My point is this, you don't need a new curriculum to do this. You don't need to read a book. You don't need to buy anything. Truth is, you already have a liturgy. You already have these habits and they're running in your house tonight. The only real question for us to answer is this: what is it actually forming us into? So before we wrap up, I just want to get a little practical with you for a moment because I don't want to leave you here this morning just feeling guilty or feeling defeated. I want you leaving here with something you can actually do tonight. In that book that I was telling you about, he talks about breaking down your day or breaking down your week into some ordinary categories. Things like waking up, mealtimes, bedtimes, several others. And for each one of these, he just says, ask one question. Is there one small thing that I could do right here in that moment that would be on purpose instead of being on autopilot? I'll just give you three, just three. In fact, don't even try all three. Pick one. If one of them resonates with you, take it home with you and just see how it goes. If you're a parent, every day you're going to wake up. You're going to wake the house up and things are going to get started. What if, before the phones come out, before yours comes out, before your kids grab those phones, what if the first thing that happened in your house when your eyes opened in the morning was something as small as you just knelt by your bed and said one sentence to God? Not a devotional, not a lesson, not a book, just, God, thanks for today. You woke me up this morning. I'm going to need your help today loving these people that you've put me with. Can you help me do that? That's it. How long did that take? 8 seconds? And if you don't even have kids in your house, you can still do this. How would it begin to form you personally if the first thought of your day was my knees hit the floor and I beg for God's help to just get through today? When the first liturgy of your day is a prayer, not a notification. what would change? How about mealtimes? I know. Weeknights, for most families, they're chaos. I get that. Everybody's going somewhere. Everybody's got to be somewhere. And half of the time, you're just grabbing food on the go. You're eating in the car. I get it. But is it possible that you might have one meal a week where you're actually sitting around a table? You know, something happens around a table that doesn't happen anywhere else. In fact, studies show us that families who regularly, on a rhythm, sit around a table and share a meal, the kids do better, the families do better, the parents do better, everybody does better. Because things happen around a table. I don't know if you've ever even noticed the spiritual formation that takes place around a table. For example, I always have to wait my turn for the food to get passed to me, and I have to ask for help. What is that? Well, that's patience being formed in you right there. Somebody spills something, but the world doesn't end, and we rally around that person and we say it's okay and we help them clean it up. You know what that is? That's grace. Something that we all need. Somebody says something nice about what's on the table instead of complaining about what's there. That's gratitude. See, you're not necessarily teaching a lesson on virtue. You just let the table teach it. You let the moment form you the way it always does. Last one, how about bedtime? What if the last words your kid hears every night are the exact same words every single night? And again, they don't have to be fancy. It could be something as simple as this. I love you, God loves you, and nothing you'll ever do will ever make us stop. Period. I have one of those phrases that I've been saying to my daughters for years now. Same words every time. In fact, you have to get to the point where it gets boring. That's my encouragement to you. Make it boring. Make it get to the point where your kid looks back at you and they roll their eyes and go, Mom, I've heard this 1,000 times. Yep, you have. And you're going to hear it another 1,000. Because if they can roll their eyes and know what you're about to say before you say it and actually say it with you, that means they're formed. That means it lives within them. That's the whole point. That's exactly how a truth stops being something that they were told and it becomes something that they know. So, 3 small things. Pick one. Maybe you can even start tonight. Last thing. I know, and I knew as I was preparing this talk, that a lot of you are going to hear this and you're going to be screaming in your heart back at me. And you were going to be saying, okay, I get it, but it ain't going to happen in one sermon. One sermon's not going to get this done. I need help. I know you do. We all do. Maybe you need some other parents that are in the trenches with you to actually come alongside you. And so we decided, we've been talking about this over the past few months, and so we've decided to make a change. You know, last fall, if you guys were around here, I did a message on marriage, and I invited some couples to come, and we decided to do a monthly gathering where we would just come and work on our marriages together. This year, we're going to do it for parents. I want to introduce, starting this fall, we're going to have our first informational kind of gathering about a monthly parenting group that'll meet here at the church. And I want to build it around a lot of the stuff that we just talked about here today, those habits, those rhythms, those liturgies of your everyday home. I want it to be a space where parents can come and sit together and just be honest about what's happening around your dinner table, what's happening around your bedtime, and learn from each other what's working, what's not working, what's discouraging, and what's encouraging. And I'll be there. I'm going to lead this. I'm going to bring some information, not just as a pastor, but from my experience as a counselor and honestly as a dad who got this wrong a lot. I'll bring all that and we'll just talk it out. We'll get some parenting questions answered. You can bring those too. You'll notice on your Next Steps card today, there's a space where it says, I just want to know more about it. I'm interested in it. All you got to do is check that box. You're not committing to anything, but I will reach out to you this week and give you some information and tell you when it's going to happen and when we'll get started, and we'll take it from there. But parents, as you walk out of here, I just want to remind you that 20 years from now, You're going to be sitting on some porch somewhere with your kids, and you'll be remembering, what are the memories that shaped us? What is it that you want them to remember? Because the truth is, whatever they will remember is probably happening right now. It's the mold that they're being poured into every single day, at breakfast, in the car, and at bedtime, one ordinary little day at a time. Let's make them count. So right now, I just wanted you to sit with God and take a moment to consider what might be your next step on this and what direction you want to take. Ed's going to lead us in that.